rather checkered history, but he made a claim and an attempt in my case, which was really a foreshadowing of what happened in the Sterling case. And he tested the judge in my case, threatening to bring the reporter into the courtroom. Now, in my case, the judge would have nothing to do with it. He said, we're not going to go down that deep, dark hole. In the Sterling case, Judge Brinkman said, yes. She allowed the subpoenas to happen, although in the end, Risen did not have to actually be forced or attempted to force to testify in Sterling's case. Eyewitness. The allegation was made by the Chief Prosecutor Welsh that Risen was the only eyewitness to a crime and that that criminal was Jeffrey Sterling. They were never able to actually prove it in the courtroom, but it's an extraordinary double standard because the former Attorney General of the United States of America, Eric Holder, I'm going to quote, in saying what happened to Sterling, quote, the defendant's unauthorized disclosures of classified information compromise operations undertaken in defense of America's national security. The disclosures placed lives at risk. Parenthetical insert. Chief Prosecutor in my case said that what I did endangered the lives of American soldiers and that I had blood on my hands. I continue with the Holder quote, and they constituted an egregious breach of the public trust by someone who had sworn to uphold it. As this verdict proves, it is possible to fully prosecute unauthorized disclosures that inflict harm upon our national security without interfering with journalists' ability to do their jobs. Anybody see the Democratic debate the other night and things that Clinton said about Snowden? This is a Secretary of State, one of the most targeted individuals by other intelligence agencies and entities in the world, using a private server to traffic in highly sensitive information. And no doubt, including classified information, and no doubt, information including sources and methods. But hey, I'm Secretary of State. Even Obama gave her cover. This is what's happened in this country, an extraordinary double standard. And the last thing Hillary Clinton is a whistleblower. All for political purposes. So you have, in my case and in Jeffrey Sterling's case, we bear the full punishment. We bear the burden of the politics of outright and abject personal destruction. We as sources, whether to hold up a mirror to those things in government that are wrong, that violate the law, that actually are in fact endangering our national security, we're the ones that pay the high price. We're the ones that are put up on the altar of national security as sacrifices. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Holly Sterling.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for being here today. I'm here on behalf of my husband, Jeffrey Sterling. And really, I just want to tell you about Jeffrey, the real Jeffrey, not the person that the government has portrayed him to be. And also to let you know that I did write an open letter to President Obama asking for his immediate pardon. So Jeffrey was born and raised in Cape Girardeau. He was the youngest of 6 boys raised by a single mother. And he had aspirations to be a great person from early on in his life. He went to high school, immediately went to college at Millikan University, had a degree in political science, and then went on to Washington University and pursued a Juris Doctorate. It was in his 3rd year of law school where he had seen a advertisement to travel the world and serve your country, which 3 of his brothers had done in the military, and he wanted to follow in their footsteps. So with that, Jeffrey immediately went home and started the process to become a case officer with the CIA. While he was working at the Public Defender's Office, he actually was informed that the CIA wanted to hire him. And so he became a case officer and pursued his dream. Jeffrey, shortly as he was working there, was doing a great job until approximately about 2007, when he was supposed to have his first overseas post. It was at that time, right before he was leaving, his supervisor came to him and said, "We've given it to another person." Jeffrey asked why. He wasn't given an answer, except that they had felt that he would actually stick out as a big black man speaking Farsi. So to that question, Jeffrey asked, "At what point did you notice that I was black?" And "You taught me how to speak Farsi." So dismayed and very upset, he was going to go to another post. He went there for a while, but unfortunately, they did not give him proper cover nor the support to be productive and perform his job as a case manager. He soon returned back to the United States and decided that he had had enough, that he wasn't able to successfully do the job that he was hired to do. And he filed a discrimination suit against the agency. He was the first black African-American male to file a suit against the agency. And that is really the start of everything that happened and where we're at now. Subsequently, Jeffrey was fired from his job. After he was fired, basically he was blackballed. He could not find work anywhere. He lost everything. He sold his possessions. He gave his 2 cats to a neighbor to take care of, got in his car, and made his way back to St. Louis, sleeping in his vehicle. He was lucky enough to get together with an old college friend who had just had a baby, and Jeffrey became the caretaker of that child in exchange for room and board. So here's a man that has a Juris Doctorate and was working for the CIA, and now he's taking care of a newborn baby. That's when I had the pleasure of meeting him, actually. It was in 2004 that he had finally secured a position as a health insurance fraud investigator. And Jeffrey and I had met. We met on Match.com, had 2 dates, and said we were going to get married on the beach barefoot. It was love at first sight. So Jeffrey excelled at his job at WellPoint as a health insurance fraud investigator. He received many accolades. He single-handedly found a Medicare fraud case in Florida that was about approximately $32 million, and went and testified and had the conviction of the 9 individuals that were responsible for that. On top of that, he was the ambassador of the United Way Giving for his company. He was in great standing. He was doing well. He was moving his way up in the company. Shortly after those events had happened, he had a knee replacement surgery, was on medical leave, and his boss had called him to ask him to come to work while still on medical leave. Jeffrey went to the office still using a cane, and shortly after his arrival, he was arrested by the FBI. Not only did his company helped orchestrate him to come to the office so that Jeffrey could be publicly humiliated and arrested there instead of coming to our home, knowing he's on medical leave and no threat. That was on January 6, 2011. And He was then taken to Virginia, in jail for approximately a month. Judge Brinkema did not give him the choice to come home. We went to court. We have wonderful friends that we stay with here, and asked our friend to come up to the podium and basically said, "Can Jeffrey Sterling live with you?" And she said, "Well, I think he would like to go home with his wife." And she said, "I'll put it to you this way. It's either Mr. Sterling stays with you or he goes back to jail. Which one are you going to have?" Of course, she graciously said yes. Jeffrey stayed here till approximately May, and then he was allowed to come home. He was subjected to taking drug screens, even though he has no history of substance abuse. So we basically lost everything. He was not able to get a job, although that was part of his condition, that he had to get a job. That was part of his release condition. So he tried and had to report to them all of the jobs that he was applying for. It was rejection after rejection. Subsequently, so Jeffrey's never worked since his arrest date on January 6, 2011. We were originally supposed to go to trial in October of 2011. And on the eve of that trial, William Welch, for some reason, the government could not go forward with their trial. So we went back home and waited. No answers, wondering what was going on. Well, what was going on was they were trying to get Risen to testify, and that's when it did become the Risen case. We went to the oral arguments, and Mr. Ed McMahon, Jeffrey's attorney, announced that Jeffrey was there present. Prior to the announcement, the government stated that Jeffrey Sterling was one of the most dangerous men in our country. When Mr. McMahon got up, he said, Your Honors, I would like to let you know for the record that Mr. Sterling, one of the most dangerous men, is standing here right next to me. The courtroom erupted into laughter over that statement. Jeffrey, myself, nor our lawyers thought that was really funny. It was actually a tragedy. He's been made basically to be a public spectacle. Excuse me, I get a little emotional talking about this. So we went on with our life, waiting for the trial to come. The trial came, and as many as has stated that there really was absolutely no evidence that Jeffrey had done this. We never hid the fact that Jeffrey and Mr. Risen did speak. It was in 2002 that he covered Jeffrey's discrimination suit. And his discrimination suit actually was not dismissed until 2005. So they did have a history of speaking from 2002 to 2005. That was completely disclosed. On the witness stand, the main FBI agent, Ashley Hunt, admitted during cross-examination, she has no emails, she has no telephone recordings, she has nothing that can solidify or prove that Jeffrey had reported any classified information to James Risen. In fact, she said, I have just speculated that Jeffrey did this. In addition, there was a CIA manager that had made it known that there were over 90 additional people that were briefed on Operation Merlin that could have been the person that leaked the information. Not one of those individuals was investigated ever. It was solely Jeffrey. So with that, unfortunately, somehow a jury found Jeffrey guilty on all charges. And he was sentenced to 3.5 years in prison. During the sentencing hearing, it was requested that Jeffrey be placed in a facility close to home. On a Thursday, we received a letter. On a Tuesday, we needed to report to the facility. That facility is in Englewood, Colorado, 900 miles away from our home. So not only has Jeffrey's life been destroyed, he hasn't had a job since January 6th of 2011. I'm a social worker. I love my job, but I don't do it for the money. We do not have savings. We do live paycheck to paycheck. In fact, we've relied on friends and family to get us back and forth to Virginia for the years of going to pretrials, hearings, and then for the hearings. And now, yet again, I have to rely on the goodwill of people to be able just to go see my husband. I've been able to go 3 times, and it's heart-wrenching to go see him there. He doesn't belong there. He's in with rapists. He's in with murderers. He's in with child molesters. These individuals, although it's a minimum security facility, have been in prison so long, 20, 25 plus years, that they've worked their way, due to good behavior, down to being in minimum security. Most of them, unfortunately, do not have education. Most of them cannot read. Most of them cannot write. And Jeffrey knows this because he is employed as a tutor there. And he's trying to help them obtain a GED. However, if you can't read or write, how are you supposed to be able to take a GED? As I said earlier, Jeffrey was a lawyer. He lost that. In the facility, he's being made to take continuing education classes. On my last visit, he said, I learned some new skills. I said, I'm almost afraid to know what those are. We try to bring some comic relief in once in a while. He said, you'd be very proud of me, Holly. I know what a checking account is, I know what a savings account is, and I know what a loan is now. And I know how to secure all those things. And I said, well, that's great, because I didn't really want to have to teach you that when you got home. He also had to take a critical thinking class. 12 hours he was supposed to study. At about 2.5 hours, he said, I'm done. Took the test, handed it up to the instructor. They said, you didn't do 12 hours. He said, I studied this ad nauseum, probably middle school, beginning of high school. I'm going to take the test. If I get a quarter wrong, I'll take your study for 12 hours and take the class again. Well, he's never heard anything back. So what does that mean? He got 100%. So one of the other things about having to see Jeffrey is, unfortunately, it's a blessing that I get to see him. I do get to sit next to him. It's not behind glass with a telephone. But for that privilege, he has to be strip searched before and after our visit. Here's a man that is intelligent, is caring, is the love of my life. And for over 10.5 years, the government has just come down on him. And it was solely because, first of all, he had the audacity to stand up for his rights as a human being, and they didn't like it. Because, unfortunately, in this country, if you're not Caucasian, you're still no one. And then that just fueled the fire for when Jeffrey was able to have Mr. Risen cover his discrimination case. Of course, where were they going to go to? The supposed disgruntled black man that sued the CIA.
No, I'm still up. How about a little something in the chat there? Can everybody hear me? Hello, hello, hello. Okay. Anybody hearing me? Late Night in the Midlands.com chat room. Can somebody give me a shout? Thank you, JH. All right, so I'm good. So this is Peter then. All right, so let me get him. Oh, there we go. All right.
Okay, well, looks like we peeved off.
Peter, you gotta hang up. You gotta hang up on Curtis, still, Peter. You brought us all back.
Well, Curtis, if you're with us, hang up yourself. Oh, wait, I might be able to do it for me.
Yeah, we got it.
Okay.
Oh no, now you're calling him back. Oh boy.
Sorry.
All right.
Sorry, we have thunderstorms here, and we just had I thought I was going to be down for the rest of the night, but it was the power went off and came back on. No, it was not the elite attacking us, although I do want to get into that subject.
Yeah. Okay. Well,
Well, I'm glad to hear it was thunder.
Well, I said what I had to say, Peter. So go ahead. I know you had a comment you wanted to make.
Yeah, help! I've been knocked off the air. Oh shucks, where was it? Well, go talk about having to reflect. Tell you what, why don't you folks carry on? I'll catch up.
Well, I was just talking about my interest, where my interest came in this subject, and that how Marshall Masters, you know, and I've been critical. Believe me, I've had a guy, and Marshall, you know him probably pretty well by now, King Don, who's in my chat, and him and I would argue back and forth, and I'd say yes. Marshall has some good information, but it hasn't been proven to me yet. And then finally I saw that video, and I could honestly say you found something. So, you know, it's...
Let me say this. I forgot my original thought in the scurry to get back online, but that's okay. I will say this. I've listened to virtually everyone that is out there at one point or another. People say, have you listened to this person? And I was like, oh, geez, I listened to that person. I go back and look at a video. Yep, I've listened to what they've had to say. I've listened to what all of the I'll call them David Icke wannabes or whatever they are. I've listened to what they've all had to say, and none of them have an answer other than, oh, well, we're going to reach a higher dimension, and we're going to ascend, and we're going to experience a new life someplace else. Hey, that's called rapture, folks. Which is not substantiated by the scriptures, by the way. The idea of the rapture came out of a large evangelical movement that happened back in the early 1800s. You'd be surprised how many religions are still around, which was started back in the 1800s. They just grew into something else. But that's where this whole idea of the rapture began. Before that, there was never any mention of a, quote, rapture. I'm not going to get into church to dogma. That's not why we're here. The interesting thing is, though, when you do look at the scriptures and how it's laid out, I use it personally as a timeline. I gathered a lot of information from Richard Hoagland, right up to his $33 attendance for his, Comet Elenin seminar. And I didn't pay the $33. It was eventually put out on YouTube, and I watched it for free. But I thought, boy, isn't that an interesting number? Isn't that telling? And eventually I stopped paying attention because what Richard was saying, now I did learn some things, but it wasn't what he was, when he would say something, it was like very esoteric, non-definitive. It was out there in the ether someplace, and you had to wait for more information. Stay tuned for drip, drip, drip. And so, you know, it's like, come on, give me a break. And then the trolls, whenever I would make a comment on his Facebook page, the trolls would come out. Oh, exactly, that's fear porn. I know it's not. It's a warning. I don't know how many times I've used this expression. If your house was on fire and your neighbor tried to wake you up, would you tell him, go away, it's fear porn, you're a fearmonger?
Well, and I don't try to convince anybody of anything. All I'm doing is I'm trying to get truth. Once I confirm something and it's real to me, I'll then share it with others. And if they want to, you know, follow along and look into it, great. But a lot of times, and I'm not saying everybody, but a lot of times I find this on YouTube all the time. You got people trying to debunk that have never even, you know, I call them the parrot society. They repeat everything they hear. They don't want to do any research of their own, and I run into that quite often with people. And so,
and the more closed mind they are, the less likely they are to read anything other than the headline, make a comment based on ignorance. I got into a heated debate over a topic with that in a friend's restaurant one night. Got up and walked. You know. This gentleman pulled, I love this, he pulled his heritage. He said, well, my great-grandfather was a major in the Confederate War and in the Confederate Army. And I'm thinking, oh, so your family comes from a bunch of bigots, huh?
That was good. He must have stuck you with a check after that one.
Well, we weren't dining together. We just happened to be in proximity thereof as the conversation was going on. But I got so upset over the situation, I walked out without paying a bill.
Good, you stuck him. Great.
Well, it was my friend's restaurant. I stuck my friend. I paid the bill later on, but I was so pissed at this person's ignorance. The fact that he would make a comment based on no information whatsoever to base the comment upon.
None. Yeah. You know, I mean, it's like, you know, you go, they say, okay, I want to debate you on your evidence. Okay, fine. Have you studied it? No, but I want to debate you on your evidence.
And what you get,
and it's like, have you looked at any of my videos? No, but I want to debate you on your evidence. You know, it's like, so what are you going to do? Just call me names? I mean, how this is going to help? But, you know, guys, this behavior is all, it has nothing to do with Planet X. It has everything to do with social programming. Social programming is very powerful. Let me explain to you how this works, because this is important to understand why these people just do these idiotic things. Is that, first off, we are talking about a topic that provokes a deep racial memory that is in our memory engrams from birth, of rocks falling out of the sky and killing a heck of a lot of people. And so it is a terrifying thought for us. It just immediately evokes terror. And awareness, when you come into awareness in this topic, like I often say, it's like getting hit in the face with a dead salmon. You're just spitting scales for a while and wondering what the hell happened to you. And so what happens after your racial memory of a space threat is provoked, you're having an incredibly powerful, fearful, emotional response, which is then immediately channeled through social programming. Now, social programming comes, if we were in North Korea, you know, well, yes, everyone's in lockstep for the great leader. Okay, we know who's doing the social programming. Here, it's every bit just as powerful, but it's more subtle. And the social programming has a pyramid. At the top of the pyramid are the central bankers. And then they're the ones telling the corporations what the message is. Then the corporations are telling the governments that are in service to the corporations what the message is. And then it finally filters down to the people we rely on for advice, our doctors and our ministers and our parents and so forth. And finally, there we are at the, you know, the bottom end of the triangle. And
might I add, this is also somewhat of a game of telephone. So the message at the top either becomes amplified or distorted by the time it hits the bottom. But what it all comes down to is that we're controlled, and we're never ever told the truth.
We're never told the truth. And here's the thing of it is, you can ask everyone, does social programming exist? And everyone will look you straight in the face and say, absolutely, social programming, there's no question about it, it exists. And then right after they say that, they're going to look at you and they're going to say the same thing that every alcoholic who is in denial will tell you. But I can control it. All right? And alcoholics will say, I can control it, and I can control it, and they'll do that until finally they've destroyed their life, and gosh knows how many other lives, and they show up one night at an AA meeting, and they stand up and they go, I'm so-and-so, and I'm an alcoholic. But they've got to really wreck their lives in order to get to that point. And with social programming, it's the same thing. Everyone it's a given. There's no hidden fact about it. But what people don't understand is that they embrace it like alcoholics embrace the bottle.
All right. Let's take a look at this. And it doesn't have to be alcohol. It could be a number of things.
Anything. And it really boils down to people just cling to the bliss of their ignorance like jealous lovers. Now, the folks that don't do that, huh?
Who's Dancing with the Stars?
Yeah, who's there? You know, it's like, you know, what's Beyonce doing today? And that's the reason why that's all you see on CNN.
Who's on
So
first?
people, they want the distraction. They don't want to deal with the long-term threats. Now, people who have money, the top 2%, if someone's in the top 2% and they don't already have a bunker, and I'm talking about $500,000 is like entry level for these folks. If they don't have one of these things, and typically they're multi-million-dollar bunkers, they are a real oddball in their social caste. These people do not sit here and go with the cell phone sundog, all these fear porn, all of these disinformation mantras, and you know, attacking anybody that's trying to present information. They are like sponges. They soak it up because they understand risk. They understand you take risk, you mitigate it, you evaluate it, you protect against it. But in the final analysis, you're always looking down the road to say, okay, what could adversely affect my position? And you plan for dealing with that, which is no different than every military in the world does war games for every possible contingency, including alien invasions. All right? People who work with risk are the ones that look at this. I call them the perceptives. They look at it rationally, and they move forward in a very rational manner, and they do some very impressive stuff. The people who do not work in risk, the ones that want a paycheck because they don't want uncertainty in their lives, these are the ones that are going, oh boy, rocks falling from space. I'm going to channel this through my social programming. Obviously, if you're talking about something that is not about being a good consumer, and you're one of those, all right, and you get mocked and humiliated, and you can, it's really easy to tell when people are in this knee-jerk social programming response mode because they're completely irrational. I see this with folks that are coming into awareness and have had dreams, visions, and premonitions, and unfortunately, only 1 in 5 couples are you going to see where both husband and wife are in awareness together. And when they do, these are incredibly happy people, just incredibly happy people, and they're busy researching and preparing and planning, and they've got control over their lives. And they are, what's really important is once you are in awareness, you are really free of the social programming. You are marching to the beat of a different drummer, all right? And you're being punished for it. You know, you're off everyone's Christmas card lists and so forth. But you're walking humbly with your God, and it opens up your life to a whole new dimension. That's amazing. You go through what the mystics call a Kundalini ascension, and you become really spiritual. You get much more connected to the cosmic consciousness, God, Yahweh, whatever you want to call it. But your sense of connection, your sense of purpose, and how the universe is unfolding really expands in ways that are nurturing and fulfilling. And for the people who are the fear babies that are still stuck in their social programming with these knee-jerk reactions, they can't relate to it. And what I see with these couples is that one in awareness will tell the other, honey, just please look at this mountain of evidence I've accumulated. And the spouse, who's a spoiler spouse, is going to go, no, it's all stupid. I don't want to look at it. Never going to happen. But just look at a few things. No, it's all stupid. You're stupid. And if you don't do it, I'm going to divorce you. And see what happens. That's it. It gets into these really, really nasty threats, bad behaviors, name calling, mockery, humiliation. And, you know, the interesting thing is I have never seen someone in awareness who is married to a spoiler spouse. Never do I see them say, well, you're as dumb as a sack of hammers. I'm going to divorce you. Never. They're always as loving as possible. They always bend backwards. They always turn the other cheek. It's the other spouse that immediately goes on the warpath with, if you don't stop this awareness crud, I'm going to divorce you. Okay?
And the hammer. You'll burn in hell.
You'll burn in hell. And the interesting thing is about once that threat is laid down, the spoiler spouse, then they're back. They've hit the nuclear button. Okay, now it's a winner-take-all kind of situation. And in 1 out of 10 cases, I see that the spoiler spouse will divorce the person in awareness. But in the final analysis, 9 times out of 10, it's the person in awareness that winds up divorcing the spoiler spouse, if for no other reason than you're just tired of dealing with all the negativity they're injecting into your life, and you just want some peace and quiet.
Absolutely.